Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really complex, but incredibly important. It's the surprising link between your own immune system and, well, reproductive success.
It really is. And honestly, it often flies under the radar.
Yeah, it feels like a secret battleground almost. So today we want to give you the kind of intellectual cheat sheet on it.
That's the plan. We're diving into the source material that explores how common autoimmune disorders, where the body mistakenly attacks itself, how they actually contribute to infertility and miscarriage.
Right. Our mission here is to distill all that dense info, look at the mechanisms, the prevalence rates, and give you the crucial knowledge without making your head spin.
Exactly, because it really boils down to this fascinating paradox, doesn't it? Reproduction needs the immune system to cooperate, but autoimmunity is fundamentally about conflict.
Explain that a bit more, the tolerance idea.
Well, think about it. A fetus is genetically half different from the mother. Technically, it's foreign material. So for a pregnancy to even happen and stick, the mother's immune system has to actively tolerate it. It needs to dial back its normal attack response.
Okay.
But in autoimmune conditions, that tolerance system is already broken somewhere else in the body. The immune system is attacking self. So when you introduce a pregnancy which requires this delicate immune peace treaty, you often get, well, conflict instead.
When it needs diplomacy. Okay, let's unpack this. So if that peace treaty breaks down, how does the immune system actually interfere? What are the main ways it throws a wrench into the works?
Yeah, looking at the sources, we can group it into about four main pathways. The first is pretty direct, immune dysregulation. This means the body makes autoantibodies, those like misguided soldiers that literally target sperm or eggs or even the developing placenta.
Directly attacking the process.
Exactly. Then number two is hormonal imbalance. Many autoimmune diseases attack endocrine glands, right? The thyroid is a huge one, and if your thyroid's out of whack, your whole reproductive cycle can be disrupted.
Makes sense. And the third, you mentioned circulation issues.
Yes, vascular issues. This is a big one, especially for miscarriage. The immune system can mistakenly trigger blood clotting, often on a microscopic level, or just cause poor blood flow within the placenta.
So it's like creating tiny roadblocks for nutrients and oxygen.
Precisely. Roadblocks. And the last one, number four, we can't forget, medication effects. Sometimes the drugs needed to control a bad autoimmune flare-up, unfortunately, can be harmful, even toxic, to a developing fetus.
Okay, so four pathways: direct attack, hormonal chaos, blood flow issues, and medication side effects. But the common thread seems to be inflammation, right?
Absolutely. Chronic inflammation basically creates a hostile environment. Think of the uterine lining, the endometrium, as soil for the embryo. Inflammation makes that soil toxic, acidic, making it really hard for that little seed to implant and grow.
Right. So let's zoom in on the specific conditions where this impact is most direct and maybe most devastating, particularly for miscarriage risk. Where should we start? Maybe with the systemic ones like lupus.
Yeah, let's start with the heavy hitters. Systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE. Lupus causes inflammation literally everywhere: joints, skin, kidneys, and yes, reproductive organs. And crucially, it often comes with those antiphospholipid antibodies we just mentioned.
Which links back to the vascular problem. So what are the actual risks with lupus?
The miscarriage risk, especially if the lupus isn't well controlled, is significantly higher. I mean, the sources cite rates as high as 20% to 50%. That's huge.
20 to 50%. Wow.
Yeah. And because it's systemic, it's not just a female issue. SLE can also hit male fertility, impacting sperm quality.
Okay, and you brought up those antibodies, which leads us straight to antiphospholipid syndrome, APS. Sometimes it's with lupus, sometimes on its own, but it sounds like a nightmare for pregnancy blood flow.
It really is. It's kind of the classic example of that vascular pathway problem. With APS, you have specific autoantibodies, like anticardiolipin, that directly cause blood clots in the vessels of the uterus or placenta. It physically blocks the supply lines.
A direct mechanical blockage. How common is APS in cases of recurrent loss?
It's surprisingly common in that specific group. The data suggests APS is involved in maybe 10% to 15% of recurrent pregnancy loss cases. And remember, RPL is typically defined as 2 or more consecutive miscarriages. So if you faced repeated losses, especially early ones, APS is definitely something to investigate. It can stop implantation right in its tracks.
10 to 15%. Okay, let's pivot to the endocrine system now. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This feels incredibly common. I know so many people with it, but I don't think the link to pregnancy loss is always fully appreciated.
You're so right. It's super common. And Hashimoto's leads to hypothyroidism. an underactive thyroid.
Mm.
That messes with the absolute basics, regular periods, ovulation, even preparing the uterine lining. Plus, thyroid hormones themselves are just critical for the baby's brain development.
And the sources mentioned the antibodies themselves, like anti-TPO, might be part of the problem too, not just the low hormone levels.
That's a really important point, yes.
Yeah.
Primarily, the antibodies signal that the thyroid gland is being destroyed, leading to the low hormones. But there's also some evidence suggesting these antibodies might directly interfere with placental function too, sort of a double whammy.
A double whammy.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the risk level if Hashimoto's isn't treated properly?
The miscarriage risk essentially doubles. It goes from the baseline average up to around 15% to 20% if the hypothyroidism isn't managed or if those antibody levels are really high. So getting treatment is absolutely key.
Doubles. Okay. Now, one that honestly surprised me in the source materials was type 1 diabetes. The miscarriage rates cited were incredibly high, potentially up to 60% if it's poorly managed. Is that purely the blood sugar issue, or is the autoimmune part playing a role too?
It's mostly the metabolic chaos from the high blood sugar, the hypoglycemia. When glucose levels are consistently too high, it causes massive oxidative stress throughout the body. Think of it like cellular rust.
Cellular rust. I like that analogy.
Yeah, it damages tissues, including reproductive ones. It impairs how the ovaries function, and it can directly harm the developing embryo very early on.
And those rates, 30% to 60% miscarriage risk in poorly managed cases, that's staggering.
It is. And like lupus, it's not just about female fertility. High blood sugar is bad news for sperm, too. It reduces motility and can damage the DNA inside.
Okay, so we've hit the conditions often linked to higher rates of actual pregnancy loss. But now let's shift gears slightly. Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Some autoimmune conditions don't necessarily cause miscarriage directly at such high rates, but they significantly impact the ability to conceive in the first place, subfertility. Rheumatoid arthritis, RA, seems like a key example here.
Exactly. RA is characterized by chronic inflammation, primarily in the joints, but it's systemic. This inflammation seems to interfere with things like ovulation consistency or maybe makes the uterine lining less receptive, so it often takes women with RA longer to conceive.
So difficulty getting pregnant rather than necessarily losing the pregnancy.
Generally, yes. And women with RA tend to have fewer children overall, likely partly due to this delay in conception.
But there's a really important caveat the sources mentioned about RA and miscarriage, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely critical. The miscarriage risk itself isn't usually significantly higher with RA unless the person also has antiphospholipid syndrome, that clotting disorder we talked about.
Ah, the APS connection again.
Right. The other big factor with RA, though, is medication. Treatments like methotrexate are fantastic for controlling RA, but they are highly teratogenic, dangerous for a developing fetus. You have to stop taking it months before even trying to conceive. That requires serious planning with your doctors.
Okay, very important distinction. Let's talk celiac disease. Autoimmune response to gluten. I feel like this often gets boiled down to just, oh, you're not absorbing nutrients, but it's more complex, isn't it? The immune system itself is involved.
Definitely. It's not just a passive absorption issue. The damage to the gut lining is immune-mediated inflammation. And yes, that leads to malabsorption of key nutrients like iron, zinc, folate, which are vital for ovulation and embryo quality.
Right, the building blocks.
But beyond that, the underlying inflammation from untreated celiac can be systemic. It might affect the endometrium directly, making the uterine lining less welcoming, less receptive to implantation. It can also affect male fertility, lowering testosterone and sperm counts.
So it's that immune double whammy again. Inflammation plus lack of nutrients. What does this mean in terms of numbers?
Well, for women with untreated celiac, infertility rates are estimated around 10%, and their miscarriage risk is consistently reported as being 1.5 to 2 times higher than the average population. It really highlights how gut health and immune health are tied to reproductive wellness.
1.5 to 2 times higher. Okay. We should probably briefly mention a few others where the link might be less direct, or maybe they often show up alongside some of these higher risk conditions.
Sure, like multiple sclerosis,
Yeah.
MS. Fertility can be affected maybe by hormonal changes, the sheer fatigue of the condition, or sometimes the immunosuppressant drugs used to manage it. The data on miscarriage risk itself is a bit less clear-cut compared to, say, APS.
Okay. And Sjogren's syndrome.
Similar story. Sjogren's causes dryness, inflammation. The miscarriage risk seems mainly elevated when it's associated with lupus or APS, those known high-risk factors.
Right, the comorbidities. And what about something like autoimmune hepatitis? Liver inflammation affecting fertility.
Yeah, the liver is central to metabolizing hormones, especially estrogen. If you have significant liver inflammation from autoimmune hepatitis, particularly in advanced stages, it disrupts that hormone balance, which can definitely reduce fertility.
And one more we have to include, even if its classification is debated sometimes, endometriosis. There's a strong immune component, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether it's truly autoimmune is debated, but there's undeniable immune dysregulation.
Yeah.
It causes chronic inflammation and scarring in the pelvis.
Yeah.
And the impact on fertility is massive. Infertility affects somewhere between 30% and 50% of women with endometriosis. Huge numbers.
30 to 50%. Wow. Okay. So we've mapped out the problems, the ways the immune system can interfere, the specific conditions, the risks. It's complex, which leads to the big question. What does this all mean for you, the listener, if you're trying to navigate this? How do you take this knowledge and actually apply it?
Yeah, that's the crucial step, isn't it? Moving from understanding the problem to finding solutions. The key takeaway from the sources, really, is the value of an integrative approach.
Meaning?
Meaning, while Western medicine is absolutely essential for diagnosing and managing the primary autoimmune condition itself, you need that integrative approaches can focus on optimizing the whole internal environment. They work on calming the immune system, reducing that background inflammation, enhancing that state of tolerance we talked about earlier.
Okay, so it's about using all the tools available. Can things like, say, acupuncture or specific herbal medicine protocols, can they genuinely help improve outcomes when autoimmunity is a factor, even if someone is already getting conventional medical treatment?
According to the source material we reviewed, yes. There's evidence suggesting these modalities can help improve some of the underlying autoimmune markers and, importantly, improve pregnancy outcomes. Specifically, potentially reducing miscarriage rates by helping to stabilize that overactive immune system.
But it's key that they're presented as working with Western medicine, right? Not instead of it.
Absolutely, critical distinction. It's additive, not a replacement. The idea is to work in conjunction, collaboratively, to foster that immune piece needed for pregnancy.
Leveraging everything. Are there places mentioned in the sources that really specialize in this kind of combined approach?
Yes. The sources highlighted this philosophy drives centers like, for instance, the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness. They've apparently been doing this for over 20 years, using customized acupuncture and herbal plans alongside the work patients are doing with their reproductive endocrinologists.
Right, the collaboration piece.
Exactly. That collaboration is key.
Okay, so for anyone listening who might want to explore that integrative path further, you mentioned the Berkeley Center is in Midtown East in New York. And the contact info from the source was their website, www.berkeleycenter.com. That's BERKLEY center.com. Or the phone number, 212-685-0985.
That's right. It's that commitment to integrating approaches, looking at the whole picture, that often leads to better results when tackling these complex situations.
This has been fascinating. This deep dive really underscores how the immune system, which we think of for fighting colds, can actually be this hidden saboteur in conception and pregnancy, and linking really common things like Hashimoto's or even untreated celiac directly to these fertility challenges. It's just a powerful reminder of how interconnected everything in the body truly is.
It really is. And if we pull back to that bigger picture again, the whole theme today was that reproduction requires this active immune negotiation, this tolerance. So here's something maybe for you to think about. If the goal is achieving this immune piece, what other things in our lives, things that seem totally unrelated, maybe chronic stress or environmental exposures, perhaps even the health of our gut microbiome, could also be quietly disrupting that fragile immune balance needed for life to even begin?
Definitely food for thought. Thank you so much for breaking all that down. And
Yeah.
thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.